The metallic tang of blood coated Jarek's tongue, souring his victory cry. Yet another skirmish won, another step in the Kelgian Empire's expansion. From atop the charred hillside, he surveyed the primitive farming settlement reduced to smoke and embers. These humans were no match for Kelgian strength, no resistance worthy of even the slightest amusement. It was war without challenge, a hunt against sheep. Boredom gnawed at him like a festering wound. His lieutenant, Vorka, scaled the hill, face drawn with unease, unusual for a hardened veteran like her. "Commander, recon teams haven't reported—" Her words stumbled into silence, as if she feared uttering them. "Report what, Vorka? Spit it out already," Jarek demanded, his patience frayed to breaking. He'd endured this desolate mudball long enough. One final check on the subjugation protocols, and they'd abandon this pathetic human world. His warriors would thank him for it. Vorka swallowed, her antennae twitching in a nervous tremble. "There are more settlements, Commander. Far, far more." She took a shuddering breath. "Humans. We didn't account for this density, their sheer numbers. This can't be the extent of our intelligence. What games are our so-called superiors playing?" Jarek spat, his rage spiking at the thought of being duped with half-baked data. It changed everything. A species capable of supporting this sprawling population was more advanced than anticipated, with the potential resources and desperation to fuel a resistance his force might not overcome. He scanned the charred ruins once more, and a cold sliver of dread settled into his gut. Had they poked a viper under the false assumption it was a worm? His orders crackled across the comlink, the voice of High Command sharp and clipped. "Commander Jarek, you stand relieved. Priority extraction is underway. Abort mission and await return transport. Immediate compliance is imperative." A tide of indignant rage flooded Jarek, washing away his unease. Abort? Now, after tasting victory, on the brink of completing the conquest? "High Command, explain. This subjugation is nearly complete." He choked back his protest as another comm burst scrambled the channel. It wasn't from command, but the garbled panic of frontline Kelgian forces. What he did understand sent talons of horror down his spine. Attacking on multiple fronts. Tactics unlike anything, they won't stop. Relentless. The comm signal degraded into static, but the chilling phrase remained stark against the silence. Tactics unlike anything. Just a taste of this human resistance, and High Command ordered a full retreat? Were humans truly this formidable, or was the mighty Kelgian Empire, built on centuries of war and domination, filled with gutless cowards? Pride and a growing knot of fear warred within him. Vorka's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and trembling. "Commander, they're coming. Hundreds." Her words confirmed what dread whispered in Jarek's own mind. This wasn't a retreat, an extraction. It was a panicked flee. He wouldn't accept it. Pride fueled him as much as rage. They would take the high ground, make a fight of it, salvage honor, while High Command soiled their legacy in panic. With guttural roars to rally his troops, Jarek ordered a fighting withdrawal. It was insane, yes, but better to defy orders with valor than submit to the gnawing doubt that something in him had broken at that whispered phrase. Tactics unlike anything. It didn't take long for Vorka's grim prophecy to come true. At first, mere shadows flitted among the blasted trees and ruined homes. Then they poured forth, a tidal wave of humanity. They weren't the broken rabble he expected. This surge of humans wore crude armor, a mismatched mess. Yet there was a terrifying focus in their mismatched eyes, not the glazed panic of prey under assault, but cold predatory determination, and their tactics. They fought in small chaotic squads, using hit-and-run strikes, luring his forces into dead ends and crude traps. No single human might stand against a Kelgian warrior, but in their calculated frenzy, they whittled the Kelgian troops down with grim efficiency. Fear now competed with rage in Jarek's heart. These creatures, so physically soft, seemed carved from unyielding iron. Every Kelgian blow landed was repaid tenfold. Their primitive projectiles pierced armor. Their blades found the gaps between plates. But more than mere weaponry, it was their determination that shattered his warrior spirit. They would not retreat. They would not yield. In death, their eyes remained focused not on their wounds, but on dealing one final blow to their Kelgian killers. This wasn't war as he knew it. It was a maddening dance with the spectre of annihilation. In a whirlwind of blood and chaos, Jarek and what remained of his decimated command group fell back to the settlement's shattered remains. Each gasp of air felt like fire, as his battered body screamed for respite. And then he saw it. The reason for High Command's terror, the thing these soft humans unleashed to shatter the mighty Kelgian warrior spirit. Among the humans, towering figures clad in gleaming metal exosuits emerged. Unlike the humans' chaotic fighting style, these beings moved with lethal efficiency, each precise gesture a testament to horrifying power. It was technology far beyond human capacity, a testament to desperation born of annihilation. He rallied his exhausted forces, knowing deep within his shattered pride it was a futile gesture. These exosuits were the trump card, humanity's last terrible answer to the invading Kelgians. "Stand tall!" he roared, a sob caught in his throat as much as a battle cry. "Kelgians do not die on their knees!" Vorka stood beside him, her once fear-lined face hardening in grim acceptance. "Then they'll just have to kill us with our blades in hand, Commander." She raised her weapon, a dented and bloodied relic from ages-old glorious conquests. Her voice boomed across the decimated troops, the sound ragged, laced with the defiance of a cornered, dying animal. It was a chant Jarek hadn't heard since the last days on their Kelgian homeworld, before their rise to a galactic empire. In those dark days, every fight was a fight for survival against impossible odds. His warriors, no, his brothers and sisters in the crucible of this madness, roared the chant back, the sound vibrating the ravaged settlement, resonating with a power not born of strength, but of indomitable, terrifying finality. The war chant of those who walked into battle clad in nothing but defiance. One by one those towering humans came into view. The exosuits glinted in the fading light, weapons bristling with potential death. They might be encased in iron, but fear pulsed within Jarek at the cold calculation he saw mirrored in their eyes. No bloodlust, no fury, just the calm efficiency of seasoned executioners. This wasn't just warfare, it was extermination. His Kelgian pride demanded they go down fighting, every claw and bite inflicting its price on humanity. Yet a seed of morbid curiosity planted itself in his broken spirit. Even now, even after facing a foe beyond reason, he couldn't fathom how this soft species had driven the Empire back. And that curiosity, he decided, was more powerful than mere warrior instinct. This, perhaps, would be his final victory. Not of arms, but of understanding. As the first exosuit thundered across the ruins, Jarek tossed his weapon aside. An act so contrary to every scrap of warrior code that his own troops seemed momentarily lost. With hands raised, he stepped forward, a lone Kelgian amidst the sea of vengeful humans. For a moment, tense silence settled over the broken world. Humans in their salvaged armour and exosuits, Kelgians in their battered glory. In that frozen eternity, Jarek felt no terror, just a bizarre resignation at the cruel whims of fate. Maybe his sacrifice would mean one less human dying at Kelgian hands. Maybe it would simply be a pathetic ending to an invader's arrogance. Or perhaps at least the humans might feel compelled to answer whatever questions lingered in his maddened mind. One of the towering exosuits stopped just as a monstrous weapon levelled at him. There was a pause, long enough for hope to blossom like a diseased mockery, just before the human spoke. The words were flat and dispassionate, echoing not just from the exosuit's vocalizer, but from an abyss of hate carved into the soul of his species. Get ready to see what happens when humans get mad. Jarek expected oblivion, the blast, heat, energy, raw force to obliterate even his armoured flesh. He welcomed it. After all, what else could this monstrous display of power unleash? What other punishment could humanity devise for invaders who judged them weak? And on some perverse level, he wanted to experience that final testament to humanity's wrath, to finally comprehend the fury they had awakened in this corner of the galaxy. The weapon crackled to life. Instead of searing destruction, something far more chilling engulfed him. The light wasn't a blinding flash, but a cold blue brilliance, enveloping him, tugging at him like a tractor beam. It wasn't painful, yet the sheer unfamiliarity bred a panic far deeper than any blade or plasma could. His Kelgian instinct screamed of wrongness, violation. There was a disorienting lurch, then stillness. His limbs moved again, a welcome relief, but his muscles responded sluggishly, as if weighed down by some invisible burden. He blinked, expecting a human execution squad. Instead, the settlement stretched before him, charred yet familiar, but as he turned, seeking his warriors, something caught his eye. His hand, Where once a warrior's clawed, scaled limb had ended in a killing appendage, there was now only smooth, sickly pale skin, soft, pliable. No trace of Kelgian armour remained. Panic erupted with primal intensity. "What sorcery is this?" Jarek roared, his voice a grating croak amidst the human silence. "A trick, an illusion." Yet there was no trick. He stumbled over his own unfamiliar feat, his body a foreign mockery of what it had been. It felt as if something vital had been stripped away, a sense of strength, of rightness. The humans stood unmoving, almost statuesque in their silence. His Kelgian blood boiled. Perhaps they would finish him now, but he would not die a mewling beast. His voice choked as he spat insults and ancient warrior oaths, all met with stony indifference. It was more degrading than any fatal blow. Then, with terrifying precision, the exosuits turned as one and marched back towards the ruined village. In that calculated withdrawal, Jarek saw the true answer, the human response that cut into his Kelgian warrior heart more deeply than any weapon. This transformation, this violation of his being was more than just punishment. It was dismissal. They didn't bother killing him. Even in their fury, he was deemed a non-entity, a broken toy unworthy of their further attention. Vorka was where he'd last seen her, but changed. Like him, robbed of every mark of a Kelgian. She stared at him with wide eyes, not in recognition, but in the blankest horror. The chilling wave of realization surged stronger than any battle frenzy had ever been. Even at Kelgia's fall, a warrior spirit had lived on in their exile, driving them from one conquest to the next. There was always an enemy to vanquish, a planet to subdue to sustain their fading identity. Now, that spirit, his legacy, had been stolen along with his shell. This was their strategy from the start, wasn't it? The thought escaped in a guttural whisper, barely recognizable as his own voice. They hadn't been defeated on the battlefield. They'd been disarmed on the most fundamental level. With one terrifying act, humanity had rendered the Kelgians insignificant, an entire species neutered, not defeated, just dismissed. He imagined those towering metal-clad warriors returning to their settlements, relaying news not of glorious bloodshed, but of the pathetic sight of Kelgian invaders reduced to quivering wretches in stolen skin. It would be a humiliation greater than any death could bring. It was in that despairing moment, his pride replaced by an echoing void, that Jarek's eyes fell upon the glint of metal embedded in the dirt. Its contours sparked a flickering memory, his discarded weapon. No clean death awaited him here, not with every human looking upon him with contempt instead of bloodlust. His legacy, however diminished, still demanded at least this much, not in defiance but in weary acknowledgement of a simple truth. A cornered, broken beast still knows how to bite. But Vorka's hand clamped on his wrist before he could reach the blade. He turned, surprised to find neither pity nor rage on her altered face, but a flicker of chilling resolve. "No, Commander." Her voice echoed his own weariness, tinged with a newfound determination. "This isn't the end. This is where Kelgians rebuild." Despite the horror clinging to every line of her body, the spark of defiance returned in her eyes. That primal Kelgian need to bite back, to refuse annihilation, still lingered within her. It was a seed amidst this desolation, a desperate echo of their former warrior spirit. "How?" Jarek grasped, a bitter note in his unfamiliar voice. "We are lost. There is no—" His words fell away, useless. "Perhaps no return to what we were," Vorka answered. "But that doesn't mean no future. The humans underestimated us. They think we'll die off, lost in this pathetic form. But Kelgians don't lie down and die. We adapt, we endure, we rise again." Jarek wanted to laugh, the sound catching in his throat like a sob. It was madness. There were only two of them, broken and helpless, amidst this human world they'd so ruthlessly underestimated. Yet the absurdity was undeniably Kelgian. It was the kind of defiant, impossible act that had marked their race's entire bloody history. And with these bodies, Jarek motioned at their frail new forms with grim irony. What weapons did they wield now? No claws, no blades, no warrior instinct. "There is more to fight with than flesh and steel, Commander," Vorka said, her eyes reflecting the burning remains of the dying sunlight. "They think we're defeated, but Kelgians haven't even begun to understand what humans unleash when they truly anger us." With those words he was no longer Jarek, proud commander of an invading force. In those embers, Another man was born, or reborn. No longer warrior, but something yet to be defined. An image flickered in his mind, of humans clad in iron suits, the cold gleam of technology and unyielding focus, a reflection of their steely determination. Perhaps a different sort of resilience could be forged from this crucible, an echo of what they'd faced, what they needed to become. It would not be about claws or blades, but of understanding, ingenuity, and an enduring thirst for something akin to revenge against fate itself. As they stumbled onwards, past the grim reminders of futile battle, an alien emotion crept into his damaged heart, mirroring the relentless humans, curiosity. This new path was one shrouded in uncertainty, in fear, but for the first time not a fear of battle's outcome but the unnerving thrill of the unknown. With her chin held high, Vorka walked a step ahead, the silhouette of a survivor, not a broken thing. He followed, an alien body still responding awkwardly, but within his chest that burning flicker remained. An unfamiliar drive pulsed within him, the kind that once spurred humans to rise from their primitive caves to dominate this world. The humans thought they'd dealt a killing blow, but perhaps they had gifted their hated enemy with the means to transform, evolve, and perhaps one distant day to strike back. But even if the end was simply survival, mere persistence amidst a harsh new world, that too was very Kelgian. They had conquered, been defeated, adapted across countless worlds, all fueled by that simple, indomitable refusal to disappear. In this new conflict the battles would be quieter, perhaps less glorious, but no less essential. The enemy hadn't changed, only the shape of the battlefield. He might not know the destination, but that first step amidst the ashes resonated with an echo of his former pride. Perhaps in this bleakest hour they weren't broken remnants, but seeds cast into the wind. And given time, even stubborn plants could crack stone. This story might not be the saga of conquerors he sought to write, but the birth of something far more primal. Survivors. Days blurred into an agony of survival. They ate what meagre things scavenged humans wouldn't, scuttling past towering metal figures with only indifference on the cold visors. There was no return to the Kelgian extraction zone. That would be suicide. Instead, they drifted with the tide of humanity, clinging to the shadows while struggling to adapt, to learn. Vorka became his teacher, an unintended irony with their drastically altered roles. Yet her mind seemed less damaged than her body. As they hunkered beneath crumbling debris, her hoarse voice echoed not with battle lust, but the desperation of one who sought to reforge herself. They weren't soldiers now, but scavengers, or, the human word she taught him, refugees. She showed him how to track movement from towering structures, interpret snippets of conversation. To Jarek, whose every instinct demanded bold confrontation, this stealth was a torment. To Vorka, it was simple fact. A lone predator was nothing compared to an organized group, however soft they might appear. "See those children?" Vorka whispered one evening, eyes peering from a hole in a dilapidated structure. Her pointing wasn't towards weapons or soldiers, but a group of giggling figures, clad in ragged, mismatched clothes. They learn things quickly, absorb more than we think. The children darted among ruined vehicles, play and survival blurred. It was their resilience that chilled Jarek to the bone. This was a generation born into their battered world, for whom chaos was the norm. These human cubs, if left to mature, would not be the disorganized mob his warriors had crushed. They would become as hardened as those in metal suits, battle instincts a part of them as natural as breathing. "Their minds, they grow quickly, yes?" Jarek forced the foreign syllables awkwardly from his mouth. His own Kelgian training was built on action, not this careful study. The war of intellect, a war they'd lost before a shot was fired. "And they inherit," Vorka muttered, more to herself than to him, "the knowledge, the skills of who came before. It is hardwired into their very beings." Her words hit harder than any projectile. With every passing day, they fell further behind, trapped in alien bodies with limited access to knowledge. Humanity, it seemed, wasn't an individual force, but a growing tide of experience, resilience, and innovation woven into every generation. This, more than any weapon, was what had transformed them into unbreakable adversaries. He thought of how Kelgians trained their young, fierce competition, raw survivalism fostering the strongest. Humans seemed to do this collectively. Those exosuited giants were forged in conflict, but also in this collective intelligence passed down through countless survivors. Humanity's fury became a legacy written in the stars, while the Kelgian spirit would likely die with Jarek and Vorka. A moonless night fell, cold and bleak. They shivered beneath salvaged scraps of metal, no longer proud warriors, but pathetic creatures struggling against the simplest laws of nature. Yet, even through the misery, an unsettling question stirred in Jarek's mind. It wasn't enough, he mumbled into the darkness, words a harsh grating in his unfamiliar throat. Vorka stirred beside him, a low grunt of inquiry mixing with a pained cough. He knew she understood. For centuries, Kelgians had thrived on conquest, driven by an insatiable hunger to rise above their brutal origins. And then, just as they seemed poised to dominate the galaxy, humanity's retaliation. It wasn't a victory won by force, but by survival itself. Humanity's very will to exist had proven to be their ultimate weapon. It was something Kelgians, with their endless thirst for superiority, couldn't match. This war, it hasn't ended. Jarek's voice hardened, the echoes of defiance reawakening. Their punishment might have changed our bodies, but not our need for purpose. He stumbled over the word, its definition distorted in this new existence, yet the core remained. Kelgians fought, Kelgians grew, Kelgians adapted. The form may have changed, but beneath the frail veneer, their spirits yearned for something grander than mere existence. He imagined the human giants, encased in armour and wielding power. An undeniable envy twisted in his heart, but not for their brute strength or weapons. It was the knowledge behind those suits, the collective ingenuity honed through struggle. If the source of their victory was adaptability, if it was this thirst for knowledge, then that was a war their spirits could comprehend. Vorka coughed, the sound raspy in the night. And how? Without strength, we are shadows on their world. They see, hear, their bodies can do things ours cannot, Jarek responded, not truly an answer, but the kindling of an idea. There must be places they won't go, tasks too small for their notice. With those words it dawned on him, his first real advantage. It wasn't their warrior past, but their size, their forced transformation, that might set them apart. An image flitted in his mind, an army of crawling insects in the grand machinery of human dominance. There was an almost poetic irony in it all. Those monstrous exosuits, the ultimate symbols of human supremacy, were made possible by complex technological systems. These titans might dominate the open field, but their size became a blind spot in the nooks and crannies of their vast technological hive. In that unseen world, Jarek and Vorka could transform yet again, not merely refugees, but saboteurs. It felt as if his Kelgian claws twitched beneath his soft palms, replaced by the itch of a different sort of warfare, an unseen war. His warrior blood roared in his veins, but it was a calmer thrill now, a hunt fueled by strategy rather than bravado. To become a thorn in the side of the unconquerable, there was a bleak irony in the realization that humanity had, quite accidentally, gifted the Kelgians a way to find a purpose amidst defeat. Perhaps, Vorka's voice echoed his thoughts. Even injured, there was a hunger in her tone that echoed his own. Perhaps there is strength in that overlooked smallness. Survival had not made her weak, but had forged a cold fire within her that resonated with his own determination. From there, survival was woven with purpose, not merely hiding. They observed, studied the humans with renewed intensity, not soldiers but builders, repair crews going about unnoticed yet vital tasks. Theirs was a world fueled by unseen energies, carried along hidden channels within their towering creations. Days were a blur of pain and frustration, yet determination gnawed away even as their bodies grew weaker. It was during one desperate observation that opportunity presented itself. They lay crouched behind a broken machine, watching two humans grapple with sparking wires and indecipherable symbols. Those are energy, Vorka rasped, a word caught from whispers carried on the breeze. Jarek, heart drumming with a mixture of terror and exhilaration, saw it too. Not the humans, but the twisting conduits and hidden wires pulsating with hidden energy, the blood flowing through the veins of the towering metal beings they'd so desperately feared. This wasn't simply about disrupting a repair. He grasped at human words clumsily, piecing together fragments of observation. Overcharge! Fire! An echo of ancient Kelgian tactics reshaped itself for this silent conflict. Not open aggression, but targeted sabotage, to make the humans' power turn against them. Vorka, ever the hunter, sensed his shift. With a predatory gleam in her still human eyes, she motioned with her frail human hands. It was a plan more desperate than daring, relying on timing and luck they desperately lacked. Yet in this act of quiet rebellion, it wasn't about survival anymore. It was about giving form to Kelgian defiance, the indomitable will to strike back at their conquerors when all seemed lost. In the dim twilight, with their soft new bodies ill-suited for the task, a gamble beyond even their darkest battles started. It wouldn't be glorious. There wouldn't be cheers of victory. Instead, a series of small measured acts almost pathetic in their insignificance. Yet with every severed wire and crudely rerouted connection, hope, thin as a thread, rekindled within the battered shell of a dying species. Extinction, they were reclaiming what it meant to be Kelgian. An echo, maybe, but an echo that refused to fade into the silent darkness of forgotten history. Their gamble began small. Severed wires sparked harmlessly in the night. Loose panels caused flickers on vast monitoring screens. Unnoticed amidst the din of human machinery, each act was tiny, but like poison slowly infiltrating a system, the quiet, persistent sabotage brought an invisible tide of chaos. They learned by necessity, by trial and excruciating error. Sometimes explosions tore through the night, bright flashes revealing their pathetic forms before they scrambled for cover. Sometimes they were driven further to the fringes, starvation pushing them into desperate risks. They grew adept in mimicry, scavenging scraps for meagre meals, blending into the background, even amidst their revulsion of living as scavengers. Survival forced a level of patience no war zone had required. It was a life defined by silent sabotage and near misses. One flickering console might go unnoticed, but two malfunctioning stations drew attention. It evolved into a deadly dance. Push hard enough to leave their mark, then vanish before the behemoths noticed the insects underfoot. Every failure taught them. They weren't dismantling entire systems, but introducing instability, cracks in the facade of unyielding human determination. Every short circuit, every brief delay in repair operations, added up to a growing hum of unease in the grand human machine. Word slowly reached them through whispered reports, gleaned while lurking under bridges or hidden behind forgotten cargo. At first the problems were dismissed as technical malfunctions, mere annoyances against the backdrop of human dominance, but the sheer volume of these hiccups bred anxiety. Then they heard a single word that was chilling in its implications: coordinated, an idea planted and nurtured in the chaos. There was more than just human error at play. There was no victory song to cheer after a quiet success, just the thrill of knowing their unseen hand had created a crack of doubt, a growing uncertainty in the enemy fortress. In that, Jarek found himself a different sort of grim satisfaction. No grand battles, no clash of armies, yet a battle was being fought nonetheless, and as rumours began to ripple about silent acts of rebellion against the unyielding power of humanity, an almost forgotten pride began to ignite. He and Vorka grew bolder, the sabotage spreading to their network of communication lines, those thin channels fueling their vast empire. One clipped wire meant whispers ceased, rumours spread, and fear, even among the seemingly unshakable humans, took root. They were invisible ghosts within the human juggernaut, slowly eroding the unyielding certainty that was one of humanity's most dangerous weapons. They were not rebuilding Kelgia, but finding a twisted new version of themselves, of what their broken species could become in this desperate world: survivors, saboteurs, the shadow in the heart of the Empire itself. It was the fight they were finally capable of winning. This, ultimately, was a more devastating weapon than any blade they'd ever wielded. The change was insidious, not overnight, but in a growing hum of disquiet. Fear was a creature the Kelgians understood more keenly than most. Its subtle, destructive influence had underpinned their own empire's expansion. And now, even beneath the towering indifference of the humans, Jarek found that same gnawing unease twisting beneath the surface. Humans didn't charge onto battlefields. Their fear manifested in tighter controls, increased restrictions and heavier footsteps amongst the towering warsuits. Whispers changed, no longer of the inevitable march of progress, but of an unseen enemy lurking in the shadows. Their actions might be as insignificant as severed wires, but with every malfunction, fear took root and whispered that not even the humans were impervious. Perhaps their victory hadn't been absolute. This creeping sense of vulnerability, though slow and quiet, was what the Kelgians fed on. Even in their broken forms, they could still bring ruin to an empire. It was a ruin forged not with teeth and claws, but with the subtle erosion of the invincible confidence humans wore as their greatest armour. This new war became its own form of sustenance. Every overheard snippet of doubt, each additional security sweep, felt like a bitter yet precious feast that spurred them to greater risks. This fragile new existence was far from glorious, yet in its desperation a primal core of purpose returned. For a once proud Kelgian warrior reduced to shadows, this quiet act of defiance was a form of honour, warped and twisted as it had become. Even without armour, the heart of a warrior was something Jarek realised could not be so easily destroyed. Vorka, once his lieutenant, became his co-conspirator in this dark new struggle. In her, too, was a shift. While the human shells they were trapped in ached with weakness, it was replaced by a different kind of power, the keen observation and relentless adaptability that formed the core of the human spirit they so deeply feared. No longer a warrior herself, she had become the strategist, finding gaps the humans were blind to and exploiting them with chilling efficiency. Together they were not Kelgian and human, but the monstrous fusion of both. It was in a shadowed warehouse where human supplies crackled with unused energy that the idea crystallized in Jarek's mind. They couldn't destroy the human hive with mere cuts and bruises. Instead, they would use humanity's own power against them, turn the fuel used to build their civilization into a torrent of destruction. In this vast stockpile, every resource became a potential weapon, and the human's obsession with order its greatest fault. He laid out a plan, whispered into the darkness where echoes of old valor mingled with the bitter desperation of survival. It was reckless, and might very well end in their final moments, but the thrill of striking this blow outweighed the risks. This was their final assault, the ultimate gambit in their shadow war, the end to this pathetic existence, not in surrender but in defiance. As Jarek whispered this testament to Kelgian valor to Vorka, he realized they would die here. Yet within their broken shells, an unyielding determination had rekindled. Their spirits, battered yet unbroken, refused to fade into the darkness. This, even more than the destructive intent, was the truly dangerous gift humanity had unknowingly given the Kelgians, rebirth through defiance, and it was upon this bedrock that their final gambit was made. Their end came awash in fire and chaos. When the energy core at the heart of the massive human warehouse overloaded, they did not try to escape. It wasn't an act of despair or a warrior's final glorious sacrifice. It was oddly peaceful. To choose their end at long last was almost liberating. For so long, the humans had dictated their path, from the stripping of their bodies to that relentless transformation into scavengers. But here, with a flicker of his deformed hand and with Vorka beside him, this firestorm was truly theirs. As the energy crackled, consuming their feeble shells, echoes of ancient battles thundered in Jarek's mind. This was not a battlefield won by strength, but by the indomitable spirit to strike back, even when cornered. It was a testament to the enduring flame their enemy might have thought extinguished. The humans would assume the explosion was simply another technical blunder, but for Jarek, it would be a victory cry echoing through time, proof that in death and rebirth the defiance at the core of the Kelgian spirit could not be silenced. For centuries, Kelgians had fought battles to expand, to rule, to survive. In this pathetic new form, on the eve of their deaths, Jarek realized the true Kelgian essence wasn't conquest, but that drive to act, to create chaos or order. It didn't matter. At the core was the relentless need to forge something, leave a mark, to rage against the dying of the light. But it was Vorka's gasp that made him turn. Amidst the roaring light, her broken but still human eyes locked on a sight beyond his notice. He turned, expecting a surge of those armoured titans ready to finish what the flames had begun. Instead, amidst the chaos, his gaze met. Children, human children, staring unblinkingly at the pyre. They weren't afraid, not like their elders, with that growing flicker of uncertainty. Their eyes reflected not fear, but the fierce curiosity of beings that had known nothing but war and hardship. These children were born to defiance, and amidst the fire and devastation, their eyes seemed to ignite with a terrifying echo of Kelgian purpose. These weren't cubs seeking escape from the chaos, but predators sizing up a rival, one they might fight, hate, fear, but would also undoubtedly learn from. Vorka coughed, flames eating at her frail body, yet her lips curled in a twisted grin. "We taught them, old friend." Her voice crackled, barely audible over the destructive surge, taught them how to bite back. It was then, at the last glimmer of consciousness, that the realization sank deeper than any wound. In this act, they hadn't simply damaged the human war machine, they had planted a seed. No, not just a seed, but a reflection. They had, with their twisted acts of defiance and sabotage, inadvertently given these resilient humans a taste of a tactic the Kelgians understood only too well: to become like a virus, to become an invisible foe, an itch within the enemy's perfect machine. With one reckless gamble, they had sparked something the humans might, even now, barely grasp. It was a terrible legacy to leave upon a galaxy already scarred by endless conflict. As the inferno consumed them, the image of those wide, calculating eyes burned through Jarek's failing sight. Humanity, driven by survival, could now mirror the Kelgian desperation of yesterday. And somewhere, within the deepest recess of his fading soul, a grim admiration mingled with cold horror. This wasn't defeat. It was an evolution of conflict pushed to its terrifying extreme. This wasn't merely when humans get mad, it was proof that a spark of madness might flicker on, long after the Kelgians and their empires of old vanished into stardust. It was a legacy more terrible and enduring than any conquest, and Jarek, in those final moments, found himself oddly at peace within that blaze of chaotic creation. This was where his final defiance lay, in the knowledge that not even defeat could truly extinguish the flames they'd inadvertently kindled. Even within the hearts of their hated enemy, humanity had learned to echo the relentless spirit of Kelgian defiance. 1,000 cycles later, it wasn't a statue that commemorated Commander Jarek. In the grand scheme of interstellar conflict, one Kelgian was irrelevant. No, within the cold, sterile corridors of the United Earth Strategic Analysis Facility, his legacy sat upon a cracked data shard, a fragment of history labelled a mere anomaly. It was a name barely whispered, Vorka, on the salvaged armour of a Kelgian scavenger, one that hinted at a long-forgotten act of defiance that triggered a change in tactics the historians found as chilling as it was baffling. In the meticulously compiled war records, there was an odd gap, a brief blip of intensified internal conflict amidst the victorious conquest of the Kelgian territories. Officially, it was explained away as technical malfunctions, overstretched supply lines, minor disturbances quelled without incident. The analysts knew better. Deep within the sealed reports, the word sabotage echoed, buried like a dangerous contagion. This period of instability coincided directly with the final silencing of the last significant Kelgian resistance pockets. Yet even the hardened veterans found a disturbing anomaly in the aftermath. On conquered worlds, where once rebellion and insurrection were expected, there had been only pockets of unrest, swiftly neutralized. But the lingering fear was different now. Not of open revolt, but a lingering threat, as unseen as it was insidious. There was a growing awareness that victory alone could never fully disarm an enemy with the resilience of a disease. In the training of United Earth's newest wave of elite forces, this was no longer the cautionary tale of an underestimated barbarian horde. The curriculum shifted. Alongside strategy and raw warfare, there were lessons taught by historians and technologists, lessons of calculated destruction, of targeted attacks on their immense infrastructure, of exploiting vulnerabilities hidden in plain sight. A young recruit during one such demonstration asked a question the strategists themselves struggled to answer. Could something like Jarek happen again? The reply came not from a grizzled veteran or a scholarly figure, but from one of the technicians, a woman whose ancestors had fled a war-ravaged world during the conflict with the Kelgians. Her weary voice held a depth few truly grasped. He already has, not another Kelgian. No, something worse. Jarek isn't one man. He's an idea now. And humanity. We learn that sort of fury a little too well. In her voice, there was neither admiration nor disdain, just the recognition of the chilling reflection their enemy had given them. In that flicker of self-aware dread, perhaps they understood, far too late, what they had truly inherited from those two broken Kelgians, not victory nor defeat, but an evolution of conflict itself. It was not a triumph to celebrate, but a cold truth to endure. Just as humanity had found fury when cornered, they now saw a future war brewing under the very guise of peace. Jarek and Vorka and the forgotten desperation of an all but destroyed species had unwittingly forged humanity a grim gift, an arsenal of sabotage and shadow tactics alongside their gleaming star fleets. Perhaps in some ironic twist of fate, their greatest enemy might now be an unseen spectre within their own empire, forever shaped and emboldened by the legacy of one reckless, desperate, and unbreakable act of defiance. This was Jarek's terrible victory, not etched in a conqueror's history but woven into the very fabric of human caution. And within the depths of those sealed reports the analysts understood. Even on the eve of total inevitable defeat, a relentless enemy could plant the seeds of doubt that might someday bear a strange, bitter fruit. The lesson wasn't how to avoid an enemy like Jarek, but the uneasy knowledge that within themselves there lay the terrifying potential to become him.